about 83, 84, we started noticing people getting sick. 1988, I did 17 funerals in the month of November, not the year, the month of November. I was doing funerals because a lot of ministers in the city would not bury people who died of AIDS.
I found out about it after I went to a doctor's office because I had a rash that would come on my leg and then disappear. So I said, let me go check this out. A friend of mine's came by and she was a doctor. I didn't want my family to know what was going on, so she diagnosed me as being HIV.
My first recollection of AIDS and HIV in DC was in the late 1980s. Much of my engagement initially was through our HIV ministry at church, but it was also the recognition that I was losing a large number of friends to the illness, quite honestly. I have lost a partner to the complications of AIDS.
It was around the time that I was coming out that I started first hearing about these things, and people were getting sick. I had started a lesbian of color organization called Women in the Life, and I was writing about things that disproportionately impacted my community, and HIV and AIDS was one of them.
For me, my recollection takes me back to when I was about 17 or 18, and I was actually, unfortunately, surviving on the streets of DC doing prostitution and sex work because of issues with my family, not having acceptance of me being transgender. But the truth is, I expected it to knock on my door.
Someone would call me up and say, you know, so-and-so is been sick or is in the hospital. And gradually, a lot of my friends were dying off, and it really affected me. It seems like it was every week there was a funeral, someone was passing. After the 12th person I knew that had passed, I just broke down crying. My partner came up and said, why are you crying? So-and-so has passed.
Often, particularly with African American mothers, when I encountered them in the hospital, they had the triple whammy. They were finding out that their child was gay. They were finding out that their child had HIV and AIDS. And they were finding out that their child's lifespan was going to be less than 6 months.
You know, we lost hundreds, thousands of young lives. And I like to say we lost them needlessly because the Reagan administration was not giving us the funding to find cures, to even find drugs to prolong lives. So I really felt like we lost a generation.
In the mid-'80s, I went to move in New York, and I worked for the VA hospital.
That's when healthcare providers actually entered the room in full gas mask and covered head to toe.
And I remember they had an AIDS ward, as again, by that time they were trying to protect everybody, even in the hospital.
And it was just awful because the patient didn't have anyone, you know, they were treated as a pariah. No one wanted to even touch them.
One of the areas that I serviced, you know, that used to draw blood from people as a regular thing in the hospital. And I'll never forget the supervisor would come to my desk, Mr. Gary, I can't get anybody, hire anybody. Nobody wants to touch the AIDS patient.
When I was in my residency in internal medicine, during my second year, my best friend came to me and said he wanted to get tested for HIV. We didn't have at that time any African Americans in the community. And I remember, you know, entering some of the offices and being surrounded by, you know, the white gay community, which is fine. I mean, I really did feel that the healthcare was adequate, but I did not feel that as a black gay man, people were attuned to the issues that might specifically be affecting him, such as he came from a very religious background, how that stigma may have played upon not only his family's reaction to him, but his own reaction to his diagnosis.
Interestingly enough, so I went to Catholic school, and gay was a complete no. Yeah, there was no any inclination. Actually, I was the only non-Catholic in the school on top of that. So I was just against everything that stood for the school. The father at the school, he would talk about sinning a lot, but he would always glance in my direction.
When you think about Jesus, his ministry, so much of that had to do with healing. But the theology at the time was that if you were sick, that Old Testament bad theology, if you're sick, then you must have done something to be sick. And religion tends to do that. At a certain point, you know, there's a kind of a shift from our Creator to human beings who determine that you didn't go by certain rules and regulations, so you are condemned, you are judged.
I never forget going to one funeral, and all of a sudden this man started preaching about abominations and going to hell. The boy's lover just looked back at me and mouthed at me, "What you gonna do?" So I just passed the word, "Follow me," and I just stood up and turned my back. So people started standing up all over. So they stopped us and said, "You gotta get out, you can't do this." And I said, "Walk." And we just walked out the church. I said, "Keep the body, we don't need it."
The real struggles and issues were the fact that I was incarcerated. And that incarceration, because most of my juvenile life had been incarcerated because my family refused to accept me after I stole a pair of panties and a bra from the Woodward and loafer stores when I was younger. It extended on to my adulthood, where I ended up going to federal prison.
As a black man first, we're expected to be very big and very strong and very powerful, but when you throw that little stigma in front of it and you put the word gay in front of there, they automatically think that you're supposed to be somebody that you're completely not.
And I can only tell you that being HIV positive and transgender in prison is really not a good feeling. Because the stigma was, we had a lot of Muslims, and all they always used to say was, "Here they come. You know they got that pack." That's what they used to call it, AIDS. They got that.
So many gay men and women are estranged from their families. So who else is gonna be there? It may be your niece or nephew who's a little more open, but so many people I know died without their family at their side. Of course, their family came around later to pick through their stuff, but at the time, as they were dying, no, the family members more times than not were not around.
The whole reaction of his family, and people were beginning to find out that he was HIV positive, you could just suddenly see people, pulling aside to include his family. And I was like, no, wait a minute, this is the same person. What's up with y'all?
I remember Marvin coming. He told us he wanted to come by. He had something to tell us. And he was telling us that he was gay.
I came out when I was 19. I told my mom and dad via text, so I had a message on my phone that I had for like 3 years. It was just sitting in my phone, so I just copied it and pasted it, and I just pressed send. And she went ballistic. But after she came to, I went home and we spoke and everything. Everything is cool, It was definitely a struggle. I don't think that anybody deserves to go through that struggle because it's not like something we chose.
And his sister, they were very close. And she didn't know. She was the one that he told that first before he told us. Then he told us 3 months later. But when he told us that he was gay and he had AIDS, that was a blow. That was a big blow to us, I cried, but I hugged him, told him that I loved him.
Guys would come shaking. I mean, literally, their hands would be shaking when I opened the door. They were so scared. One guy told me that he sat in his car for 3 weeks at the front door before he had the courage to come in. And so something else became this place up because I would tell guys, I said, look, you're home now. Put your coat up. Okay, it's safe here. Get something to eat.
The clubhouse opened in 1975. The clubhouse was a disco, no alcohol, open at midnight, closed somewhere around 6, 8 the next morning. It was such a mixture, black, white, predominantly black, straight, gay, straight folks could come as long as you were able to deal with the crowd.
The clubhouse for black gay men was our refuge. That's where we went to escape everything, homophobia, racism. When the AIDS epidemic struck, it just struck all of a sudden. It was like night and day. And everybody was scared.
I will never forget, we used to go through the membership list and check off names, and because you had to attend so many times within a quarter so you could keep your membership card. But we started realizing that these people were deceased and we were drawing line. We got to 180 some names and we're sitting there in tears. And I said, everybody stop, put down every pen. And we just walked away and had to come back. We ended up scratching over 200 names out of that book.
How were we going to survive? Because we were watching each other die.
Andre Scott, Gary Martin, Howard Morris, Skip Pettigrew, Reginald Clemens, and Calvin Samuels. That was the first group, 6, and myself. So we met and just started talking about how do we support each other. We didn't know exactly what was going on, because back then the term was ARC. And we didn't even know that's what it was. We just knew that this one had pneumonia, this one had something else, and we were there for each other. I put out maybe 5 or 6 flyers I put around. I'm going to start a support group.
A friend of mine told me after I got back in town, said, you know, there's a group meeting today, and they're offering another way of dealing with or supporting guys that have HIV.
I'm thinking I'll get maybe 4 or 5 people back to the group. I get a call. I called home and said, anybody show up? And the guy said, get here right now. I said, what's going on? He said, people are all over the house. Get here right now. I walk in, there were 20-some people in my living room, and I'm going, okay.
I had been doing some reading, and I wanted to, instead of using AZT medicine, I wanted to find an alternative way of dealing with this.
People were taught how to take care of themselves, how to live well. Not just, yes, taking care of their bodies, but taking care of their mind and taking care of their spirit.
And then the group started really growing. We had, our groups were 8 weeks long. We didn't do an open-end group. And when you came in, there was an agenda. You're gonna learn this, you're gonna learn this, you're gonna learn this.
For 2 hours every Saturday, they would teach us another aspect of holistic health, the body, the mind, and the spirit. So they teach about the body and how to, internal cleansing and fasting and food and nutrition and proteins and everything, that had to deal with physical health. Then they would deal with mental health, okay? And they would talk about mind-body dialogue and how to meditate and how to visualize and how to handle anger, stress management, all those great things. And then they dealt with the spirit.
So I was excited, and the person I called was Reggie Clemens. And he had been already attending some of the meetings that Us Helping Us had. So I called Reggie and he gave me a little spiel.
And there were 3 questions that we told people that they had to answer.
One of the first questions we would ask you is, why do you want to live? And you had to give us a reason why you desire to live. I said, because we specialize in living, not dying. You want to die, go over there and do it. You're going to do it anyway. But if you want to learn how to live healthy, then give me 3 reasons.
Are you afraid of death? Because if you are, it'll kill you sooner. Right? The third question was, does your belief system aid in your healing process? And if it doesn't, change it. Okay? And we said there are a whole lot of belief systems. There's the Catholics, the Protestants, the Baptists, the Muslims, the Baha'i faith, the Buddhists, the Hindus. I mean, so we said pick one that works for you. And we would use the classic example of Tina Turner, right? Whole time Grandpa was a Christian, Ike was beating her side the head. She became a Buddhist. She went to Paris. He went to jail. That's God.
I cannot remember how the name Us Helping Us came about, because we got to a point when we were like, we need to name ourselves, because other groups were around and had names. And so we were throwing out names, and it was like, okay, what do we do? And well, we're a support group. Well, we're into healthy living. And somewhere in there, we came up with Us Helping Us, People into Living.
Us Helping Us, People Living. We were HIV positive Black gay men helping other HIV positive Black gay men, and we believe that we could live with this disease, not die.
If we were partners, then my job was to call you Monday, Tuesday. Your job was to call me like Friday, Saturday. Are you okay? Yes. If no, then my job was then to call 3 or 4 other guys and find out what you needed. And then we would show up and take care of you. I remember one guy I went to, and he was in bed, and he couldn't get out of bed, and company was coming over, and he was like, I don't want nobody to see me like this. I said, baby, this is when you have to fluff up. It's showtime. And I got him up out of the bed, and I put a chair in the shower, set him in the shower, cut the shower on, changed his bed and stuff, put all of that away, redressed the bed, got him out, oiled him down, set him in the bed. I said, now you're ready. And I said, nobody will ever know. And I've never told his name because, I know the sheets were spoiled and all of that. I said, nobody will ever know. Your job is to look good. Make this thing look good.
I vividly remember my partner taking in excess of 40 pills per day. And at a certain point in his life, he reached a point where he said, I can't do it anymore. It brought an instantaneous gag reflex at the idea of taking another pill. And frankly, we made the decision as a couple that he would not. We have reached a point in our development where medications are much more efficient. I'm happy to say that research has led to better treatment protocols on the part of the medical community, but I'm incredibly grateful for the advances that have led us to where we are today.
I feel like the advocacy and the hard work of our forefathers is kind of like a blessing and a curse in a way. I think it's a blessing in the sense that now we have options. So we can take PrEP. Yeah. It's a 1-a-day regimen that you can take if you're HIV negative to prevent you from contracting HIV. I think the part that becomes a curse is that we never seen anyone like with AIDS. So we've never seen people, struggle with that. So it's just like, okay, well, a lot of people like to reference Magic Johnson. So yeah, Magic Johnson has HIV, but like Magic Johnson also adheres to his medicine and has the means to adhere to his medicine. So I think oftentimes when we see that, it's like, I don't know, there's not that same sense of urgency. And I think that also contributes to this idea that, like, being young, you're invincible.
I think what the older generation has passed down to our next group, the millennials and Generation X and what have you, is the knowledge that We've come a long way with this. We passed down the research and the information to know that it's not the deadly disease that it was, because we didn't have a knowledge of what this was and what was going on. We now have that knowledge of what's going on. We have some maintenance and preventive things to help that, like the PrEP and whatnot. We passed along the information that protection is key.
We know that there's drugs and things out there that could protect us or, cure some STDs. So it's kind of more careless now than it was back in the day. I feel like we already know that, okay, we could just go to the clinic and get it cleaned up, more as well as though just wear a condom or protect yourself.
I like to get the story of when I was doing a talk for African American LGBT group. And they were all under 30, all. And they said, Dr. Hodge, we talk about HIV in terms of wellness. I said, oh, wellness. And could you be a little more specific? And the gentleman said to me, we don't use doom and gloom. We don't talk about death or dying. We talk about healthy, uplifting things. And I'm like, oh, okay.
There is a divide in the young trans community versus the older trans community. The generation that we're dealing with today, many of them, not all of them, because I never want to put all in one basket, what I found is that there's just a total disregard. First of all, they don't believe that we had to walk a path, that we have to, dig the way and do things that made it comfortable for them today. We constantly tell them, but they are not accepting of that. They really feel like y'all old, you don't know what you're talking about.
One of the young and beautiful transgender persons in the audience said, Dr. Hodge, and I ran over and said, yes, young lady, what can I answer for you? She said, in your generation. Now, of course, when she said your generation, a couple things happened. Number one, my face had cracked, had fallen on the ground. Because girl had said in front of all these people, you old. So I said, oh, okay. You please finish your thought. So she said, in your generation, people died, but not in mine. And she crossed her legs and she smiled and her little friend said, tee hee hee. And I was like, okay. This is all supposed to be about wellness, right? So I can't talk about, these people who were in the ICU dying, all of this stuff. Couldn't do it. I had made a promise. So I said, well, young lady, you're right. There was a lot of death in my generation. But what I need to let you know is that the information I'm trying to impart to you is so that one day you too may be in my shoes and someone can call you old.
Helping us has been, I don't even know what the word is for that, but it's definitely changed my life in so many different ways. For starters, I changed my major from fashion to now I want to do social work because I realized, the responsibility that I have to other Black gay men.
When I get around a bunch of people that's just like me, it's like, oh, okay, so I can actually be myself. I can be ghetto. I can be classy. I can be all that in one and not feel any type of way. I can look you in your eyes and talk to you about anything because we go through the same exact thing. So it's really helped me, my confidence a lot.
Howard Thurman, a great theologian, preacher, mystic, and author, once said that each of us, first of all, must listen to the sound of the genuine within ourselves. In other words, be our authentic self, and listen for that voice, the voice of God. Not necessarily trying to be what somebody else wants us to be, but not only us helping us, but us being us.
I really value our young people, and I also, their lives are a little more complicated than in reality than ours were. And, you know, it was very simple. We were confronted with a disease that started killing us, and we had nothing. And so we had to figure it out, and we had to build it up so that we could take care of ourselves. That's a straightforward proposition. Today, there are medications that are available, and we certainly have a lot of programs and systems that are meant to work for them. And so the challenge is now, it's easy for people to say, oh, there are a whole lot of pills for these young people. Oh, they have condoms. Oh, they have PrEP. They have all of this that can take care of HIV. But their core life needs are still not being well met.
When I came to Us Helping Us and really started to observe and see things, I saw a staff that was eager, that was ready to really get out and do innovative things. Just that, and knowing the rich history that Us Helping Us has here in DC, and knowing the many eyes that are watching, and knowing and listening to the stories from people that have been in the fight since Us Helping Us was founded.
The hope is that that they take all the work that we've done and we're still doing and elevate it and push it to where we're just unstoppable. You know, eventually ending that word, that the male use stigma, and so that way we won't have to live with that anymore.
You know, it's a lot we have to do as older trans women for the younger population, but also we have to figure out what things can we do that can get them motivated to want to listen to us.
I would love to see us to be able to move beyond HIV, because hopefully there'll be a cure by that time, or at the very least a vaccine. I would love to see us start addressing other issues like legal discrimination, so talking about HIV criminalization for those that are still living with HIV. I would like to also see us making schools a little bit more culturally competent, because they are not safe spaces for youth.
The future of Us Helping Us is still to save young black gay men. The violence still exists, the homophobia still exists, and our young men are still at risk of being hurt and hurting themselves.
Well, the vision at Us Helping Us is more than just HIV testing or educating around sexual health. We work with what people call the social determinants of health, so addressing food insecurity or hunger, transportation, domestic violence or intimate partner violence, and you will see that in many of our upcoming programs. We are building the Denim Collection, which will be a collection of medical and social services.
Denim, it stands for Developing Empowering Images of Men. We are a youth empowerment project serving same-gender loving, gay, bisexual men of color between the ages of 13 to 29.
You can come in and use the Computer Resource Center for you to develop your resume or a training around a new software. But you can also get a shower if you need a shower, get toiletries or deodorant, go to the denim closet to get clothes, to go to the denim cupboard to be able to get food, and then to go to Denim Health where you can get a comprehensive screenings. When there is a cure, there's still going to be the gambit of chronic diseases that are disproportionately affecting black men. Just because we are black gay men does not mean we don't get hypertension or diabetes or kidney failure. And so it's those chronic conditions as well that we will be addressing here currently and in the future.
So the future of the HIV epidemic really rests in the hands of Us Helping Us, and our future as an organization rests in the hands of our community, who we love.